about. And this is the biggest threat to Russia, an incomplete victory, stopping too soon. If you dare stop and leave, if there's anything called a ceasefire line, Russia lost this war. Russia loses. If there's a ceasefire, Russia loses. If there's any retained Ukrainian nationalism, pockets of nationalism, whether it's in Western Ukraine, in Kiev, Lvov, wherever, Russia lost the war. I'm stating it straight up. Russia, the only way Russia wins this is absolute victory across the board. Anything less than this, then Russia should never have crossed the border to begin with. Should never have crossed the border to begin with, because Russia has kicked up a hornet's nest. They've got NATO doing stupid stuff. They got the G7 doing stupid stuff. And all this stupid stuff will fail if Russia keeps its foot on the accelerator. But the moment Russia takes its foot off the accelerator, slows down, tries to reason. How do you reason with a rabid dog? NATO is a rabid dog. Russia needs to become Atticus Finch to kill a mockingbird. Get the damn rifle out of the house and shoot the dog down in the street. That's the fate of NATO. You don't have to put a bullet in it because NATO's going to pull a bullet in its own head by doing this stupid stuff. They can't afford it. They're going to go bankrupt. Russia must allow NATO to go bankrupt, must allow the G7 to collapse. But the only way to do that is to finish the mission. The mission isn't just killing Ukrainian soldiers. The mission is eradicating an ideology that is part of the Ukrainian DNA. You must take these Western Ukrainians, you must put them in camps, you must re-educate them, and the ones that can't be re-educated must be terminated. I'm sorry, that's the level we're at right now. Too many people have died. If you weren't willing to do this when you started, you shouldn't have started. That's just what I'm saying. And I would be furious. I'm furious as an American. I'm furious as a world citizen, because Russia initiated a special military operation ostensibly to avenge the deaths of 14,000 people in Donbass and to liberate, a couple million Russians. Okay, I support that, but it's become something much bigger, and we all knew it would become something much bigger. Russia had to have known that this would become much bigger. Russia has now put the world at risk. I don't blame Russia. Maybe it needed to be done. Sometimes a boil must be lanced. But don't start something that's going to create all of this problem and then don't finish it. Finish the job. And the job is, as Russia said at the beginning, demilitarization, denazification, permanent neutrality. This may require the death of Ukraine, that Ukraine as a viable nation state can no longer exist. And believe me, if this neo-Nazi ideology has permeated the population to the level it appears to, then the Ukrainian nation no longer deserves to exist. And that would be the perfect message for Russia to send to the rest of Europe. That if you want to play big games, there's big consequences. NATO, you went into Ukraine, you got them, you motivated them. And we now know none of this was an accident. We now know this was done on purpose. Poroshenko says that Minsk was never going to be signed. It was there only to buy time for NATO to train the Ukrainian army to retake the Donbass and Crimea. That means NATO was a complicit party from the very beginning. Stoltenberg is a lying piece of dirt. Every American diplomat is a liar. Every European diplomat is a liar. They are all liars. They cannot be trusted. Why would you have a ceasefire with people you can't trust when you're winning? A ceasefire happens when you got issues, when you're not doing well, when you need to have a pause. Russia doesn't need to pause. Russia needs to put down on the accelerator and run through these people because they started it. I have no sympathy for NATO. NATO started a war in 2014 that has resulted in the deaths of tens of thousands of Russians. And if I were a Russian politician, a Russian citizen, a Russian patriot, I would be enraged to the point that I'm willing to undertake whatever sacrifice necessary to finish this job, because Russia's not strong enough. I'll say this right up the bat. If Russia pauses, it's not strong enough to win. Russia's victory comes by maintaining the pressure, by keeping by maintaining the momentum. Momentum is what will win this war for Russia. The momentum militarily, the momentum politically, and more importantly, the momentum economically, because this is an economic war more than anything. The ultimate demise of NATO, Europe, G7, the United States will come economically. But the moment Russia stops, because Russia's winning on all fronts right now. There's not a single front that Russia's not winning on. Russia, and the thing is, by keeping the momentum, the other side can't adjust, can't adapt. The OODA loop, I've talked about the OODA loop. Get inside the enemy's decision-making cycle. Well, Russia is so far inside NATO's decision-making cycle, NATO just doesn't even know what it's doing anymore. They're fantasizing about 300,000 rapid reaction forces they can't afford. Okay, that's where NATO's at. They're way out of the loop. The G7 is lost. They don't know what to do about this new reserve currency. The moment Russia pauses, they catch up. And then they start to take the initiative. And then Russia's inside their decision-making cycle, and Russia loses. So denazification means just that. Every single Nazi is eliminated, preferably with a bullet in the head, if necessary, with a noose around the neck, and if they're up to it, through re-education. But you cannot allow a single Nazi to exist. That's just denazification means. That means you change the Constitution. Zelensky ain't going to change the Constitution. That means Zelensky's gone. The current Russian or Ukrainian parliament isn't going to change the Constitution. That means they're gone. You see what denazification means? To really do it means Ukraine is gone. Welcome to the new world. Russia, if you didn't want to do it, you shouldn't have crossed the border to begin with. That's my thing. This was a stupid war to begin if you're not going to finish it. Because the second you stop, Russia loses. They can't win a ceasefire. They can't win a pause because they're not big enough. They got some advantages right now, but they haven't sealed the deal with China totally. They don't have the big pipeline going in to guarantee the supply of energy. And while they're able to sell some oil to India, they haven't cemented that relationship with a BRICS-like reserve currency that locks India into the Russian economy. There's a lot that needs to be done economically before Russia is truly secure. And the way you continue to do that is to demonstrate the weakness of Europe, the weakness of the United States, the weakness of NATO by continuing the operation the way you're going now. Don't stop. Pedal to the metal. Kill them all. I'm sorry. That's just the way I see it.
Well,